Repetitions are the very basis. You got to start there. Just understanding that this input correlates to that output helps you to gain expertise. Have you ever wondered how some people get so great at something? That's what we're going to talk about today. The question is going to be, how can you go from being good at something to being great at something? And what is the difference between a person who is good at something but not great and someone who is actually great at something? So, this is really going to be about expertise and how you can develop expertise. Okay, now I want to start out by saying that this is not going to be a complete answer because there's no one answer to that question, but I'm just going to be giving you one of the keys. And before we get started, let me just tell you that I am Mark Johnson, the founder of Bounce Pep, bringing you ideas for a fit and flourishing future. You know that I am also the youngest son of Bill Johnson. You also know that I'm so happy to have you here. I want you to leave your comments if you have questions or anything like that. Go ahead and leave them for me. And many times I do respond. And let's jump right in this. So there is a difference between simply being good and being, really great at something. Another word for great is just being excellent. Okay. So how do you develop excellence? That's going to be the question today. And as usual, I'm going to start out by taking you inside of the gym. If you've been listening to me for any amount of time, you've heard me say the word repetitions, or just shorten it to reps. You've heard me say rep, 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 keep repping, keep repping, repetitions, 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 right? You've heard me say that hundreds, maybe thousands of times, right? And that's because I'm trying to beat it into your head about how important it is to put in the reps, okay? So the very, very basis of becoming competent. Now, competence is not excellence. Competence is being very good at something. It's not necessarily being excellent, okay? But it is still the basis of excellence. You have to be competent before you can be excellent. And the basis of competence is repetitions. If you don't put in reps, then you're never going to get better, all right? This comes directly from the gym. If you go into the gym, let's just say hypothetically, you go to the gym every single day for 6 months, and you go in there and you say, today I'm going to do one rep on a bench. I'm just going to do one bench press, one rep, and then I'm going to go home. And you do that every day for 6 months straight, 180 days. You do one rep on the bench press in the gym, and then you go home. Well, you know what? Quite frankly, that's just not enough. It's not enough. Well, it is consistent because you're doing it every day, but there are not enough repetitions for you to have any effect. You're never actually going to see any progress after 6 months because you're not putting in enough reps. And in fact, we can say, technically speaking, just technically speaking, you haven't put in any reps because think about it. A rep doesn't begin until the second time that you do something. The first time is not a repetition. That's just the first time. So if you go into the gym and you say, I'm going to do one bench press every single day for the next 6 months, you're not really accomplishing anything. And after 6 months, you're going to look up and say, I didn't achieve much, right? And you couldn't achieve much, obviously, because you didn't put in enough reps when you were at the gym. So repetitions, this means doing something over and over and over, like doing it a lot. You have to have volume. Volume is very, very important. And you just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And over time, when you keep doing something, you tend to get smarter about it. Dare I say, wiser about it. You start to understand how things work better. You start to understand why they work the way that they do, right? And then that allows you to hone your approach, hone your skill, and get even better so that when you are putting in that next rep and that next rep after that, they're even more effective than the reps that you were putting in when you first started. Okay. So if after 6 months, you're still doing everything exactly the same way as you were doing it on your very first rep ever in your life, Well, that's the problem. What it tells me is that, you haven't learned anything over all that time. There's no way in the world that your first rep ever should be the same as your thousandth rep, right? Because at 1,000 reps, you've learned a lot. You should have learned a lot. You should have learned how to do it better. Okay. So my point is, repetitions are the very basis. You got to start there. Okay. And that'll get you on the path to becoming competent and as well to becoming excellent. But becoming excellent requires something else. And as I said, this is not an all inclusive answer. I'm giving you one piece of the puzzle about how to develop excellence. There are other things as well. But today, what we're going to be talking about is this one thing. Okay. Now, this really, really relates to your knowledge. You know that we talk about your health, your constructive relationships, your wealth, your knowledge, and your purpose. Those are the 5 aspects of you being the total package. This really, really is about more than anything else your knowledge today. Okay, and I want you to understand that one of the things that really separates someone who is merely good from someone who is excellent is their knowledge of a given subject or their knowledge of a given field of endeavor. Okay? The amount of knowledge that you have and the amount of understanding, your ability to understand things below the surface level and understand not only, again, how things work, but why things work. Okay, that's what makes you an expert. So let me take you back into the gym one more time and explain how this works. It'll make sense to you. So stick with it. Just stay with me now. Okay. So when I go to the gym, I almost all now sometimes if I'm really rushing, I don't do this. I'll just write down I'll write down the date and then I'll write down the muscle group that I worked out on that day. Maybe if I only have like 30 minutes to work out or something, then I won't necessarily track everything in detail. Okay. But if I'm doing a regular workout, which is most of my workouts, then what I'm going to do is I have a little notepad that I always take to the gym with me. And on the notepad, I write down the muscle group that I'm working on. And then I write down each and every exercise that I do. And I write down the number of reps. I write down the number of weight. If there's a certain grip that I'm using that I want to take note of, like a close grip or a wide grip or a pronated grip or supinated, like I'll put all those details. Okay. If I'm doing maybe like German volume training, I'll write that down. I'll write GVT. Like I'll write down all of those details so that I understand what I'm doing and I'm collecting data over time. Okay. And this is really taking me to my point. If you want to be excellent, okay, if you want to be an expert at something, you have to collect data, look at the data, and understand the data. Okay, this is how you get to the next level. This is a huge key to getting to the next level. Your willingness to be fairly meticulous and collect data so that you understand what is happening. Okay, and you understand why it's happening, and you can begin to see, if not cause and effect. Now, obviously, if you can just see cause and effect, that's great. But sometimes just understanding correlations help. Just understanding that this input correlates to that output helps you to gain expertise into a certain subject or into a certain field of endeavor, something that you're working on, right? So if you can understand cause and effect, if you can't quite understand just direct cause and effect, if you can at least understand correlations, okay, then it will help you to become an expert. And you cannot do this if you don't collect data and if you don't set some kind of, you have to have like metrics for measuring progress and metrics for in order to set goals. And when you don't have any data, it's hard to set a goal when you don't have any data to base the goal off of. You can set a goal, but it may not be effective because you don't have any data that you're basing it off of. It can just be kind of a made up goal, right? But if it has no basis in the data, then how much meaning does it really have? So your willingness to collect data. Just like if you're at the gym and you're writing down everything, that's collecting data. And then what happens? After 6 months, you can look back, you can look today and you can say, I did this today, and then you can look back all the way back through time. 2, 3, 5, 10 years back through time. You can look at your little notepad from 10 years ago and you can say, man, when I was 10 years ago, I started here, I was doing this exercise, and now today I'm here, I'm doing this, and it's this many reps, it's this much weight. Like, you can see where you've come, you can see what you were doing then compared to what you are doing now. Maybe some things are brand new. There were certain things in the beginning that you didn't do because you didn't know about them. But now here it is, all these years later, you've learned new exercises, you're writing them down, you're keeping track, so you understand what you're doing and how you're progressing. You can measure things and you can actually set goals and objectives based on the data that you have. You're not just winging it, right? And what you'll notice a lot of times is people who understand data are the experts. I mean, it's almost that simple. The people who have the data and understand it, all right, and are able to analyze data and able to therefore get better, get progressively better, more effective in something, these are the people who become experts. And so this is what I'm explaining to you. If you're an executive, for instance, you already know this. You know the difference. If you're an executive and you're running a company, you know the difference between somebody who is on top of their work because they have a whole bunch of data and they can go directly to the data and they can understand what's happening. If you have any kind of a question, you need them to explain something. Even if they can't explain it to you on the spot immediately, they can still go back to that data and get you a response very quickly because they have the data in the first place, right? So that's giving them that expertise. They know where to look. Like they have the data, which means even if they can't answer your question, they know exactly where to go and look, right? And so this is the power of collecting data so that you understand what's happening and why it's happening. Okay. And even if you don't necessarily understand why it's happening immediately, you can still go back and look at that data and start to try to connect some dots, right? But if you don't have the data in the first place, it's like, where do you start, right? And the other thing too that I mentioned before, just briefly, was just metrics. Um, Data is, it's really important for you to have metrics. If you want to get really, really good, if you want to be excellent, you want to have expertise in something, then you're going to have to develop metrics. Okay. If you're in sales, you want to know how long does it take from the first time, I get that lead until I close the actual sale, right? And so that's going to be a number of days or a number of weeks or a number of months or something, right? But you want to be tracking that over time so that you understand if you're getting better or worse. And then you can say, well, okay, this part of the process is taking too long. This part of the process is okay, but maybe this part, because it's taking too long, I need to figure out how to streamline this part of the process or do something better or different. But I need to figure out how to shorten this so that the total time from the first lead until that actual sale is made is shortened, right? But you can't do that if you're not tracking the data and you don't really understand what's going on, right? So it's hard to set those metrics. It's hard to say, well, I want to shorten that from 60 days down to 45 because you don't even know whether it's 45. You aren't even collecting data. You don't know how many days it's taking, right? So get in the habit. If you really care about something and you really want to be an expert about it, get in the habit of collecting data and understand sometimes when you're collecting data, it's not about uh, it's not about having the data to be able to share it with anyone else. It's about collecting it for yourself so that you understand what's happening and you understand all the dynamics and you understand how you can get better or how you can make something better, right? Now, the side benefit of that is if somebody comes to you and they asks you, they request some information or they ask you to share your expertise, then you're able to do that, right? Because you have the data. But the primary reason is basically for you to be able to get better, right? It's not you're collecting the data for your own eyes. You may never show that to anybody. When I'm at the gym, I don't take my notepad and show it to everybody at the gym. I don't know. That's for me. That's so that I understand, so I can get better results, right? Okay. Now, if somebody asks me, what am I doing? Then I can explain it to them. And if I forgot, it's right there in my notepad, right? So I can get the answer, right? But ultimately, you know, getting better, collecting data, and setting metrics. It's all about um, improving and growing so that you can develop expertise. And when you develop expertise, people will notice. You will be recognized as an expert. People will start to come to you. They'll have questions. They will seek advice. They'll seek counsel because they understand that you understand. They know that you probably have a deeper level of understanding than they do, and so that's why they're coming for your help, right? So data, all right. I want you to get yourself in the habit. I don't care what you're working on, whatever you're working on. Let me this may sound dumb, but let's just say you're in a relationship. Let's just say you're in a relationship, and let's say you're a guy, right? Let's say you're married. So you're a married man, and you just want to make your relationship with your wife a little bit better. Maybe it's been a little bit on the rocks recently, and you say, what can I do? Well, here's what you can do. Data, right? What I would do is maybe you have a smartphone, you have a calendar in there. I would just I would record like the date that we took, right? And then every time we went on a date, I just recorded. Nothing big, just like went to the movies on July 15th. And then maybe the next thing was, October 12th, went to went hiking, whatever it is, whatever you do with your wife that you would consider to be date or just, spending quality time together, right? And just like put that in your calendar, all right? And then you can look at your calendar and you can see how much time you've been giving your wife, right? It's something simple. And then you might say, man, the last time that I did anything with her was like 3.5 months ago. That's not often enough. Maybe I should be doing something, every 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe, we should go see a movie, next week. And then maybe a couple weeks after that, we go out and have a dinner. Or like I say, maybe a few weeks after that, we go, hiking or, whatever it is, whatever you like to do. But because you have the information just in your calendar, you can actually see what you've been doing, right? And then you can actually hold yourself accountable. Say, hey, I got to get better, right? So it's not always about making more money or anything like that or getting better at your job. This can work in your relationships as well. Just having awareness because you're keeping some record of what you're doing. It can help you out. And that's really my point to you today. Don't be afraid to keep data, all right? So that you can understand what's going on. That's how you develop expertise. All right. So that is my message for you today. All right. I want you to take this with you. Talk to you next time.